In that same bustling marketplace, before Elara learned to truly connect, she often found herself speaking to everyone in the same way. She would passionately describe the intricate patterns on her vases, the unique firing process, the rare clays she used. These were fascinating details to her, deeply meaningful because she poured her heart into each piece. But for many passers-by, this detailed exposition was like listening to a foreign language. A busy chef hurrying through the market wasn't interested in the historical origins of glaze colors. He needed a robust bowl that wouldn't shatter when dropped. A young lover wasn't concerned with the molecular structure of the clay. They sought a delicate, beautiful gift that whispered romance. Ilara's initial mistake, a common one we all make, was communicating from her own perspective alone. She assumed everyone shared her enthusiasm for the technicalities, her appreciation for the craft's nuances. It was only when she started observing, watching the couple's glances, hearing the mother's worries, seeing the traveler's practical inspection, that she began to shift. She realized that understanding her audience wasn't just about knowing who they were, but what they needed, what they valued, and how they felt. It meant stepping out of her own head and into theirs, even if just for a moment. This understanding became the bedrock, the silent foundation upon which all her later successful communications were built. Without it, even the most eloquent words would fall flat, like seeds sown on barren ground. After Elara began to grasp the varied needs of her market audience, she faced another challenge: expressing her newfound understanding simply and effectively. In her eagerness to please and to convey the quality of her work, she sometimes still rambled. When a customer asked about a pot, she might launch into a lengthy explanation about its durability, its aesthetic appeal, its cultural inspiration, and its fair price, all at once. The customer's eyes would often glaze over, their initial interest dimming as they struggled to process the torrent of information. It was like trying to catch water with open hands, too much at once, and most of it would simply spill away. The old woman, observing this, once remarked, "A single clear bell chime is heard more distinctly than a dozen clanging at once." Elara began to practice brevity. If a customer admired a piece and said it looked strong, her reply wasn't a treatise on firing temperatures, but a direct, confident, "It is, built to last." If someone paused at a bright vase, she might simply say, "It holds joy." She learned to distill her message to its essence, removing every unnecessary word, every convoluted phrase. She realized that in the noisy market, a direct, focused statement cut through the din far more effectively than a complex one. It allowed the customer to grasp the key benefit, the core message, without having to sift through irrelevant details. This clarity didn't just prevent confusion, it built confidence. It showed that Elara respected their time and understood precisely what they were looking for, making her stall a place of clear answers rather than muddled explanations. Even with her growing ability to understand her audience and communicate clearly, Elara sometimes found that customers were hesitant to articulate their exact desires. They might browse, pick up a piece, set it down, and offer vague comments like, "It's nice," or "I'm just looking." In these moments, simply offering clear statements or trying to guess their needs felt like shooting arrows in the dark. It was then that the wisdom of the old woman who had urged her to listen truly began to resonate. Elara started to do more than just hear the words. She began to actively listen. This meant a profound shift in her approach. Instead of formulating her next sales point while a customer spoke, she would focus entirely on their words, their tone, and even their pauses. When a woman sighed while looking at a delicate teacup and said, "My daughter loves these," Elara didn't immediately launch into the cup's features. Instead, she asked gently, "Is your daughter far away?" The woman's eyes welled slightly. "Yes," she admitted. "She moved to the coast, and I miss our afternoon teas." Elara had stumbled upon an unspoken need, not just a teacup, but a tangible connection to a cherished memory, a vessel for a mother's affection. Similarly, when a man complained about the fragility of his previous bowls, Elara didn't just nod. She asked, "What kind of use do you put them to?" She learned he ran a bustling inn and needed bowls that could withstand constant washing and energetic diners. His unspoken need wasn't just strong pottery, but commercial-grade durability, a very specific requirement that her general description of built to last might not have fully conveyed. Active listening allowed Elara to move beyond the surface-level inquiry and uncover the deeper motivations, the true problems, and the emotional connections that customers brought to her stall. It was in these quiet moments of focused attention that the real opportunities for meaningful communication and successful sales truly revealed themselves. As Elara honed her skills in active listening, a profound shift began to occur in her interactions. She wasn't just gathering information, she was connecting on a deeper level. When she heard the sadness in the mother's voice about her distant daughter, or saw the weariness in the innkeeper's eyes, her response wasn't merely a business transaction. It was infused with genuine understanding. This newfound capacity for empathy became her most powerful tool. Instead of just presenting the durable mug to the mother missing her daughter, Elara might say, "It must be difficult having her so far. Perhaps this cup, warm in the hand, can be a small reminder of those shared moments." She wasn't selling a mug, she was offering a tangible piece of comfort, a proxy for a hug. For the innkeeper, after hearing about his broken bowls, she didn't just point to the sturdy ones. She might commiserate, "Running an inn is hard work. You need things that stand up to the pace. These are made for exactly that kind of life." Her words acknowledged his struggles, his effort, and his specific challenges. This empathetic approach transformed her stall from a place of commerce into a space of connection. Customers didn't feel pressured or merely sold to. They felt understood. They sensed that Elara genuinely cared about their needs and circumstances, not just about making a sale. This built an unspoken bond, a foundation of trust that transcended the simple exchange of goods for coin. People started returning to Elara's stall not just for her beautiful pottery, but because they knew they would be met with a kind face and an understanding heart. It was through empathy that Elara truly built rapport, transforming fleeting interactions into loyal relationships, proving that in the market, as in life, connection often begins with truly seeing and feeling with another. Even with understanding, clarity, and empathy, Elara sometimes found that customers would look at a piece, express interest, and then drift away, only to be drawn into another stall by a bolder, more insistent voice. She realized that while she was fulfilling needs, she wasn't always captivating attention. The old woman, noticing this, once gestured to a group of children enchanted by a traveling minstrel. "A list of facts may inform," she observed, "but a tale captures the heart and lingers in the mind." Inspired, Elara began to weave stories around her pottery. Instead of merely stating a vase was beautiful, she might recount, "This blue you see reminds me of the clearest river where the kingfisher dives. Imagine it holding flowers freshly picked, bringing that very sparkle into your home." When a traveler admired a sturdy flask, she'd share, "Many a journey has been made easier with this. One adventurer told me it kept his water cool under the desert sun, a true companion on his path." She wasn't making up grand fictions. She was connecting her pottery to universal experiences, to emotions, and to possibilities. These mini-narratives transformed her plain descriptions into vibrant, memorable experiences. Customers didn't just see a pot, they saw themselves enjoying a peaceful moment, embarking on an adventure, or gifting a cherished memory. The stories painted pictures in their minds, making the pottery not just an object, but a piece of a larger, more desirable narrative. They made her stall stand out, not through volume, but through the richness of imagination it evoked. People remembered Elara's stall because they remembered the feelings her stories stirred, proving that a well-told tale is far more persuasive and enduring than a mere recitation of features. It moved her communication from simply informing to truly inspiring. Even with her engaging stories and empathetic approach, Elara learned that the effectiveness of her communication wasn't solely dependent on what she said, but also when she said it. There were times when a customer, clearly in a hurry, would rush past her stall, barely glancing at her wares. If Elara tried to launch into a charming anecdote about a particular mug, she'd often be met with a polite but firm, "Not today, thank you," and they'd be gone. Conversely, sometimes a potential buyer would linger for a long time, lost in thought, and Elara, sensing their deep contemplation, knew that a gentle, well-timed question or a softly whispered story would be far more effective than a loud sales pitch. The old woman once observed, "A seed sown at the right moment blossoms, but cast it too soon or too late, and it may never take root." Elara started paying close attention to the subtle cues. If someone walked quickly by, she'd offer nothing more than a warm, open smile, an invitation, not an imposition. If they paused, she'd wait for them to make the first move, a glance, a gesture. Only then would she engage, perhaps with a simple, "May I help you?" If they picked up a piece, that was her signal to offer a relevant story or highlight a specific benefit, tailored to their earlier unspoken needs. She realized that every interaction had its own rhythm, its own unspoken clock. Interrupting a person's thoughts or trying to force a conversation when their mind was elsewhere created resistance. Waiting for an opening, for a moment of genuine receptivity, made her words much more potent. It was about respect for the customer's space and state of mind, recognizing that even the most compelling message can be lost if delivered out of sync. This mastery of timing allowed Elara to amplify the impact of every word, ensuring her communication landed precisely when it had the best chance of being truly heard and appreciated rather than merely acknowledged and dismissed. As Elara's stall flourished, other merchants, noticing her success, began to imitate her. They started offering pleasantries, asking about needs, and even attempting to tell stories about their own wares. Yet many of these imitations felt hollow. Customers would listen politely, but often return to Elara's stall, explaining that her words just felt more real. It wasn't just what she said, or how she said it, but the genuine spirit behind it. Elara never pretended to be someone she wasn't. Her passion for her craft, her genuine interest in people, and her honest desire to provide something meaningful were palpable. The old woman, observing these imitations, once pointed to a merchant loudly proclaiming the unmatched quality of his mass-produced trinkets. "A painted rose," she remarked, "may look vibrant for a moment, but its lack of scent always betrays its truth." Elara understood that her earlier struggles, her quiet observations, and her sincere efforts to connect had forged something invaluable: authenticity. Her empathy was not a sales tactic. It was a reflection of her true nature. Her stories weren't manufactured. They were organic extensions of her understanding and connection. Customers, even subconsciously, could discern the difference. They recognized the genuine twinkle in Elara's eye when she spoke of a piece, the sincere tone in her voice when she offered a suggestion. They felt that she wasn't merely trying to make a sale, but genuinely believed in the value of her pottery and the satisfaction it could bring. This authenticity built an unwavering layer of trust that no clever sales pitch or imitation could replicate. It wasn't about being perfect, but about being true. It proved that in a market full of carefully constructed facades, the unvarnished truth of one's character and convictions was the most powerful and most resonant form of communication. Even before a single word was exchanged, Elara began to realize that conversations were already underway, communicated silently through gestures, expressions, and posture. Initially, she had focused solely on the verbal exchange, but the old woman had often pointed out the subtle dances of the market. "Watch their eyes, child," she'd advised, "and the way their hands move. The mouth may speak one thing, but the body often whispers the truth." Elara started paying meticulous attention to these nonverbal cues. A customer might say, "Just looking," but their lingering gaze on a particular bowl or the way their fingers unconsciously traced its rim told a different story. If someone approached with their arms crossed and a slight frown, Elara knew not to rush in with an enthusiastic greeting. A softer, more distant acknowledgement was more appropriate, giving them space. Conversely, an open posture, a direct gaze, or a smile was an unspoken invitation to engage more directly. She also became aware of her own nonverbal communication. She ensured her posture was open and inviting, not closed off or hurried. Her hands, when not holding pottery, rested gently on the table, indicating calm and approachability. Her smiles were genuine, born of her authentic interest rather than forced. She understood that a warm, welcoming presence, maintained even when silent, conveyed trustworthiness and openness. These silent signals often set the stage for the entire interaction. A reassuring nod, a shared smile, or a moment of comfortable silence could communicate more connection and understanding than a dozen carefully chosen words. It was in mastering this unspoken language that Elara truly completed her communication toolkit, allowing her to connect effectively even before a word was spoken, and to reinforce her message long after it was uttered. Elara's journey was not a straight path. The market itself was a living, breathing entity, constantly changing. New merchants arrived, old ones departed, seasons shifted the available goods, and the moods of the populace waxed and waned with the news of the city. What worked perfectly one morning might fall flat by the afternoon. A technique that charmed one customer might irritate another. Elara learned that even with all her honed skills, rigidly sticking to a single method was akin to trying to navigate a winding river with a straight stick. The old woman, watching a sudden downpour scatter the market-goers, once said, "The willow bends with the wind and survives. The oak, unyielding, may break." Elara embraced this wisdom. She learned to observe not just the individual customers, but the broader rhythm of the market. On a bustling festival day, when people were light-hearted and seeking gifts, her storytelling was more effusive, her interactions quicker and more joyful. On a quiet, reflective morning, her approach was softer, more patient, perhaps focusing on the comforting aspects of a well-crafted tea set. She also adapted her communication style to different personalities. For the practical buyer, she emphasized durability and function. For the artistic soul, she spoke of inspiration and aesthetic beauty. If a customer seemed reserved, she offered space. If they were jovial, she mirrored their warmth. This meant continuously learning, observing, and being willing to adjust her approach on the fly. Her success wasn't built on a fixed formula, but on a flexible framework, allowing her to fluidly shift her communication to match the ever-changing tapestry of needs, moods, and circumstances around her. It was this unwavering adaptability that ensured Elara's stall not only survived but thrived, proving that true mastery in communication means being perpetually responsive to the dynamic world you inhabit. Because your voice is your power. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to English Story Avenue, where every story helps you learn English and every word helps you grow.